Hello, hello. Okay, so welcome to this meeting. So the title of the session is The Myth of Artificial Intelligence. I'm Alberto Sangiovanni Vincentelli. I am the Edgar L. and Harold H. Butner Chair of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science at the University of California, Berkeley. And with me on the podium, we have my right, Eric Felsen, who is from University of Texas in Austin. Then we have Stefano da Empoli, and then we have Michele Gerace. Stefano is working on a variety of aspects in artificial intelligence. He's not an engineer, so he's an economist, and then Michele instead is a lawyer. So we have a vast number of different competencies. So just to frame the topic, you know that AI is supposedly the most talked about technology, and that many people talk and say horrible things, and not to say stupid things about it, and some people say some intelligent thing. So we hope that this panel will say some intelligent thing, and it is important to understand what we are talking about, because one of the problems of the people who talk stupidity about artificial intelligence is that they don't understand what is underneath artificial intelligence from a technical point of view. And so let me just give a few definitions just to make some sense. So the first one is about AI in general. Is talking about machines that do tasks that are normally considered to be human tasks. So it's a very general definition. And in fact, if you think all engineering is essentially artificial intelligence, looking at this broad definition. Now, what you see written often is about machine learning. Machine learning is a different topic, is a subset of artificial intelligence, and it talks about algorithms and models to sustain decision-making in an uncertain environment based on data. Okay, so this is what, in general, you read on newspaper is discussion about this particular topic. It's machines that learn and help making decisions, and sometimes they make decisions, which is part of the problem. And then we talk about, neural networks, right, or deep learning. Now, deep learning is a subset of machine learning, because in machine learning, there are many different techniques that you can use according to the mathematical underpinning that you are using to do this decision-making or understanding what a problem is based on input-output data. Okay, so this just to give you a frame. Now, recently you have heard about the large language models, and large language models is a way of understanding natural speech. And they come from deep learning, so the basic mathematical model is the same. But because natural language is a very complicated topic, they need a very large model. That's the reason why they're called large language model. There are 1.5 trillion parameters in the latest version of ChatGPT-4. Okay, 1.5 trillion parameters. And so whatever the large language model tell you or interact with you, it's very difficult to find why they answer you in a particular way. But in the large language model, there is an underpinning, and the underpinning is the theory of language. So Noam Chomsky, many years ago, was studying what is the origin of language, and can you formalize how language is used and how you can understand language. On the other side, there was the so-called large language model, indeed, so which are statistical model of languages that were considered to be very empirical and not many results in either of the two pieces. Until we had so much computing power that we could build these humongous language models that are based on statistical concept. And so what the large language models do is that they study what is the probability that a certain word follows another word. Okay, that's all they do. And so they answer you in a language that looks very natural because they have all this experience. The problem with large language model is what they tell you, what is the content the form of a language is fantastic. I mean, you couldn't write any better than that. But it's what is inside, which is the problem. Because how do they get the knowledge? By looking at the internet, right? So they crawl over the internet, they find topics that are related to your question, to your query, and then they answer putting together what they see. And sometimes they use inference to give you an answer if they don't have it, right? So for example, here, if you ask about myself, now no longer because say correct the error, but comes out that I won the Nobel Award, which I didn't. I wish I didn't. But I can see the inference that why they say that. In this particular case, you can see, but some other cases you cannot, because if you look at my CV, there are certain things that Nobel Award winners have done, okay? So that's the reason why it did that way. They also say that I'm retired. I'm 76, but I'm not retired. I still teach at Berkeley. This also you can see why it says it's retired, 76, retired. And this is a kind of inference that the algorithms do, right? Because they don't have any other way of finding what is right and what is wrong. They don't understand. So this method, they don't understand. They respond, but they don't understand what they are doing, okay? So this just to give you a frame, at least as I see it, and there is a lot of work going on in trying to fence this large language model from making horrible mistakes and affecting people, especially, for example, when they go and vote, right, for candidate X and Y, because it's very easy kind to influence the large language model to give specific answers. So how do you prevent that? Well, for example, OpenAI, which is a very important place where research in artificial intelligence is done and where the large language model was originated, the one that we know. Well, they have 3,000 people looking at mistakes and try to correct these mistakes so that you don't get horrible answer. You heard about hallucination, right? So, and that means when the answer is clearly wrong, right? We say that ChatGPT hallucinates. So the goal is to try to fix this hallucination problem. And then there are the philosophical parts. So this purely, if you like, mathematics / statistics / technical / computer science. And then there is a basic fundamental issue, which is a philosophical issue or a humanistic issue, is that can we claim that we are copying intelligence, that we are creating something that is intelligent? So the first thing you have to figure out is what does intelligence mean? Not clear at all. So in fact, some of our distinguished guests will address that issue. So what is intelligence really? And then if we can't find a definition for intelligence, how can we say that we build intelligent machines if we don't know what intelligence is? So these are some of the questions that we need to address. Last issue that I want to have you think is in the large language model, we say 1.5 trillion parameters, which means that the network is really very, very big. In order to train this network, so to find the parameters in such a way that if you ask a question, they answer in English or in Italian or whatever other language, you need to train, right? And training means that you have to find the value of 1.5 trillion parameters. How can you do that? Well, there are rooms full of computing engines, mostly based on GPUs, and the amount of power that these GPUs consume is immense. So it is estimated that 1 month of doing training in large language model is equivalent to the yearly consumption of energy for Switzerland, just to give you an idea. So we cannot go on like this, right? So it's not going to be feasible to continue using the same kind of models, same kind of computing elements and so on. So there is a large sector of the AI world that is trying to reduce the amount of power that is used and speed up the training and the inference process, which is after you train it, what the model tells you. So that's the complexion of the game. From an industrial point of view, there are trillions of dollars that are floating around. And mostly it's about the fact that with these techniques, you can eliminate a lot of workers, right? So why? Because many workers that we see around, especially the white collars, are doing manual work. And so this is definitely subject to automation. Not necessarily with machine learning, could be in any other technology that is based on computing. And so this is an important question, right? Which has always been automation equal loss of work in some sector, gain of work in another sector. Are we ready to take the challenge and to build or to educate people so that they can make the best out of this technology? Without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Eric, who is going to talk to us about his view.
I'm not sure what I can say now after that. You made a lot of the points I wanted to make, so and that's fantastic. So I think I started getting interested in. So I've been in artificial intelligence for about 20 years. I actually started in early January of the year 2000, so that dates me a little bit. You can do the math. You know, I was college aged back then. And I've been working in a field called natural language processing for about 23 years. Sort of semi-retired now because I'm kind of writing. But I got interested in this idea that so AI is also politics. It's not just technical stuff. And so if you equate AI with data capture, which is to say there is no data that matters for these algorithms other than the data that we produce and the data that's actually about you. There are certain sort of political consequences that actually follow from that. And so you get into this tangled mess of, well, we couldn't solve this one problem before we had, as the gentleman said, massive amounts of data. But once we have massive amounts of data, it's not that you're powering ChatGPT, it's that a few people, hyper-funded billionaires are actually now claiming this is artificial intelligence. And so one of the reasons I decided to write the book was that made me angry, because like artificial intelligence used to be a diverse field. We used to have different ideas that we would test empirically. You know, how can we create cognitive intelligence in a machine, and what are the limits of mechanistic methods? And it became a kind of, it got almost, I use the word co-opted. It became specifically the marriage of data, you know, to statistical methods. And I think that marketing campaign was so successful that it's almost difficult for the new generation to even conceive of AI other than what it is on the web, which is basically hoovering up everybody's data and then regurgitating it. And the thing is there's another way to look at this, because it is a difficult point, and I lose the thread myself sometimes, especially when I'm running across Rome. Anyway, sorry. It's a difficult point to grasp, but another way of looking at it is the actual fundamental innovations, the human innovations, are actually decreasing. And there's empirical studies that we can point to in terms of the number of patents that have been generated. They're actually substantive patents rather than just, rather than just generating quantitative patents that don't have a large impact. And so you might think about it this way. In 1953, Watson and Crick discovered the double helical structure of DNA, right? In the 80s, people don't know, CRISPR is a little bit older technology. In the 80s, someone developed gene sequencing technology, right? It was perfected more when we got faster computers. What's the actual innovation? What's the discovery? Is it the discovery of DNA itself? or is it CRISPR? And so what happens when you're in a overly computational age, which is what we're in, is that you're pulling away from the human mind, which actually, we actually make all this possible, and you're putting it into the products of our engineering. And that sounds like a fantastic idea, but it's not. I'm here to tell you it's not. So I think we're living in a very, frankly, and look, I'm not a doomsayer. I'm not trying to say this to be controversial, but I think we're living in a very actually uninnovative time. And my question, which I don't know the answer to, is, did we pick all the low-hanging fruit so there's nothing left to think about that's fun, like quantum mechanics, right? Or general relativity, or I don't know, pick your favorite really interesting theory. Or are we in some sort of perversion of the best of ourselves, so that we're mechanizing ourselves in a way that we just can't reach fundamental innovations anymore? And so I think that question is the key question to ask in the 21st century. And I also have to just say this, the Italian Renaissance, we're in Rome, it's pretty inspiring to me. So thanks. I think I'm just gonna say that at this point, and see where we head.
So, thanks for inviting me to this very interesting debate. I actually have to say, I also have a book coming out, and in preparing that book, I read Eric's book that I quoted in my book, and I totally agree with the point on his book about superintelligence and what I call in my book the deification of AI. This deification of AI encompasses both techno-optimist Ray Kurzweil, just to quote one name that you quote a lot in your book, and also techno-catastrophist Nick Bostrom, that you also quote in your book. So there is a sort of singular convergence, between these two blocks. I think that, but on the other hand, this is something that I do in my book. My book is more on the effects of the so-called generative AI, so the last wave of AI that, of course, is under development with all the imperfections that Professor San Giovanni Vincentelli told us. But I think, on the other hand, that there was an advancement, a quite significant advancement, with all the imperfections that there are. Hallucinations, or so-called confabulations, are one of these imperfections. But in my book, I quoted the critique of Joshua Barilal that you quote, and the sentence, the famous sentence that is apparently trivial, but made the artificial intelligence got wrong. All the way. The pen is in the box. So the pen no, actually, the box is in the pen. The box is in the pen, and of course, the box. It's. What kind of box you can imagine, but it's bigger than this, basically. So it's impossible. But that, because that artificial intelligence didn't pick up the context and didn't know that the box, the pen is not this thing, to write, but it's the fence, the court. So it's much bigger than this. And so it could contain, I mean, of course, a box. I did the experiment to ask ChatGPT about this, and the answer was more satisfying. It was not perfect, but was much more satisfying. I did that also for other, limitations, past limitations that were quoted, much quoted in the literature. So I think that with all the limitations of current AI, even generative AI, I think there is an improvement. And so I decided, you told before because you decided to write your book. I decided to write my book because I wanted to see something different from both the deification and also the trivialization, because there is also this snobbish, kind of thinking, oh yeah, that, with all these hallucinations, these means are, these tools are totally useless, basically. And as an economist, I think they can be useful. Of course, they need to be used properly for the proper, tasks and objectives that you have in a kind of collaboration between humans and machines. That is fundamental in my view. For that reason, I totally, and I write it in the book, I was taken aback by the CEO of IBM that said that at a certain point, I think in May, they froze all their hirings because they expected a pretty big amount of employees, to be substituted by artificial intelligence. Of course, as the professor was saying before, I expect some tasks, to be substituted at least in the medium term by artificial intelligence, and some other to be added. But I think that the core should be, and it's not something that automatically happens, probably. So we should be, and everyone, every organization should do that, be responsible enough to look at this perspective of human-machine collaboration. And just to say, the last things, more from an economist point of view, I see two big advantages, two big benefits from generative AI. The first one is the democratization, the disintermediation. I say in the introduction that generative AI was more or less what the Protestant reform was for religion. As the Protestant reform disintermediated from priests, at least for the basic tasks, not for everything, of course, but for the basic tasks, generative AI and tools of generative AI disintermediate from computer scientists. I can prompt directly, these tools. Of course, the way that I prompt, can give very different results. So it's not, I don't want to, and I say in the book that prompt engineering probably is substituting coding. For many years we said, not because coders are not useful, but we said that in schools, and for everyone, you should teach coding. I also say that, for many years. Probably now, yeah, of course, coders are still useful, but you should have massive prompt engineering, probably more than massive coding. They're difficult, but I think it's the right approach. To relate in every task with generative AI. We had the example of these lawyers in New York State. Yeah, that's we're basically inventing, thanks to the because of the generative AI, some cases, and it was nice that well, of course they lost the case and they were sanctioned. I mean, they received a fine, but the most funny part was that they were asked by the judge to write to the judges that were erroneously quoted from these cases, but because the judges existed, and they had to write a letter of excuses to them. So this is a nice illustration of the fact that ChatGPT or these kind of tools can do part of the work, but of course they cannot substitute all the work. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of confusion about exactly why we have this technology that people like me are complaining about when I spent my whole life trying to do it, and now that we have it, I don't like it. And I think that's a fair question to ask. The problem is the hallucinations. When ChatGPT or the large language models more generally get something wrong, there is absolutely no understanding in the system for why they got it wrong. So what are we going to plug that into? A military system? I mean, I'm not, yeah, I mean, like, exactly. So, and it's not only that, it's a twofold problem. Not only does the system not know what it doesn't know, so you're looking at a bell curve where mostly it gets the information correct, which is why I've said all along, I think it's a legitimate innovation. But when it gets something wrong, we fall off a cliff and there's just nothing we can do. We can't even reverse engineer it. It's a black box. It doesn't know, and we can't reconstruct. So in my view, we actually are in a dead end, even though it seems like we're in an innovation. But I also agree with you that people are not going to stop using it, frankly. People are not going to stop using it. So I think the job of public intellectuals, if you will, not some pompous, but is to kind of like really try to clarify, like, this is what we're dealing with. This is the technology. So thanks.
Yeah, just one last point that are the effects of on the labor market, on the jobs market. This is the first kind of automation that has symmetrical effects on the job market. So it was before, it was said about the white collars, and it affects both, all the workers, low and high skilled workers. And according to some studies, it helps more low skilled workers than high skilled workers. Of course, experimentations and empirical studies are at the beginning, so it's very early to say. But this is something also important in my opinion, because it's something very different from an economic point of view from the past. Yeah. We are very early stage to look at all the effects, but I think it's something interesting to point out. Thanks.
Yeah, in fact, you can see that there is a common thread here. So we are trying to debunking AI, right? So we are trying to make you understand that there are issues that we need to resolve. It's not a panacea. It's not that you have AI and the world is going to be better. There are many dark sides that we will need to resolve, and the dark side can only be solved by using your brain, right? A wise brain. Because we understand, the machines don't understand. They manipulate, they mess around with a combination of words and combination of concepts, but they don't think. So you can ask again, maybe you can ask a machine to prove a theorem if you give it enough information about the mechanism according to which you prove a theorem. But to pose the theorem, That is the question. So sometimes it's more important to pose the problem than to solve it, because posing the problem, it frames it. And so when we talk about prompt engineering, right, prompt engineering are people who are asking questions to ChatGPT. That is the prompt. So you phrase the prompt in such a way that you get the answer you want. So the answer doesn't come out, what you ask is not corresponding to what, and so you change what you ask until you get the information you want. And so that is a sort of programming. What do? You program ChatGPT to give you something that you are asking, and that it cannot give you until you ask the right questions. So you see, again, we go back to the issue of what is the problem that you are trying to solve, how you pose the problem. Now, about, for example, the white collars. White collars are people who are doing work that in general are in offices, not in the factory shop, right? So AI in factory shops has already been kind of done in the sense that the standard automation does that, right? So it replaces humans. But it does it with a bit more solidity than large language models. So anything that you can do with large language model, statistical methods and all of that, think always, is it improving what I'm doing or not? If it is improving, hallelujah. If it is not, you have to reject it, right? So if you have to solve an optimization problem, if you get an answer that is better than what you have, hallelujah. Candle to AI. But if it doesn't give advantage, you have to be clever enough to say, send it out. It's not good. Throw it away. And so this is a important point. And this is technical, but when we go to the political issues, that is where the cookies crumble, because people may want to make you believe that AI or whatever it is connected to it is a great thing, and that they are the only ones to be the bearer of truth, right? Very, very, very dangerous. Right? It's what you were mentioning about the very rich and so on, like OpenAI. Who founded OpenAI? Right? So
Right. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having hyper-funded companies. Microsoft put in $13 billion. A lot of that was actually just hardware. Basically, I don't know if you guys know this or not. So, if you already do, sorry for. But the server farms that run these are about the size of a small town. And so you're not going to get into this game like if you're not hyper funded with literally billions of dollars, you're not going to get into the game. And the problem is it's a bell curve game. ChatGPT is never going to discover something. It just ingested billions of words that we made and reproduces them in a way that sometimes is very valuable. I've asked it before when I'm doing my own research, can you suggest a list of 5 books? And I think in that sense, it's actually a really valuable technology. But what's being sold in California, I don't want to pick on Silicon Valley, I have friends there, but like, yeah. But what's being sold is the same old idea that we created this kind of creature and nobody can object to it or talk about it because it's a new intelligence on the face of the planet. And if you think that there's something wrong with ChatGPT, you must be some religious fanatic or something like that. I'm here to tell you, like, okay, if you have $5 billion and a server farm and you can analyze billions of words on the internet and it can answer questions like produce me a list for what I should do next, where did we get? Is that really an innovation? Like, really? And actually, it is a dual response because on the one hand, as you very correctly pointed out, the Bar-Hillel example, it also solves all the Winograd schema examples in, where you have co-reference resolution and so on. So it actually does do stuff that we were trying to do. So there's, on the one hand, it does do something, but on the other hand, it's further entrenching the world in this mechanistic viewpoint, and it's calling something that's actually not that. Like, this is not Galileo. This is regurgitating our own words. And so like as a writer, what I try to do is I don't take a position on it. I'm a computer scientist. I actually build systems for a living. So I don't take a position on it as a piece of technology per se. What I do is I try to place it in a context where people can understand what it is and what it's not. Because if we lose the thread, at some point, we're really going to lose the thread, right? So you got to stop that. That's the job of the writer, is to stop that process, is to say, what are the facts? What are the facts? So yeah, thank you.
Our last speaker here is Michele, who is going to be very interesting, because he said, how should I introduce it? And he said, mammal, Michele the mammal, okay? So, which means mammifero for those of you who do not understand the nuances of English. So, Mr. Mammal, tell us something.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Thank you very much to the Diplomacy Festival della Diplomazia, and of course to our host, Center for American Studies. So I would like to linger on the context, because in their expectation, I have to deliver you mainly the philosophical part, and that it's what I want to do. First of all, because congrats, Stefano, for your new book. So you pointed out some interesting point that should be read from everyone is curious about generative AI and the impact of technologies of our lives, especially on social, cultural, and political life, so all life. Then I knew about you because I read you in very lot and appreciated newsletters, so full of contents. But it was first time I read your book, and given the time, I think it's very fair for people to say the truth. So I have to say that I just read part of the extract of your book just because of the time, because I know that when you write a book, there's nothing more unfair than taking a joke with the writer. So I want to be honest with you, and I just took some cues for your books. And the one is the one we shared before that I wanna read. It's just a line, but it's something that recalls us to the context. Because if you miss the context, you miss your exquisite human faculty, because we are the context in which we live in. If we miss the context, it could be a mess in the justice, in our life, in your very individual or relational life, with your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, with your dog, anyway. So the sentence I pointed out and I shared with all of you before is that the very large mystery at the heart of intelligence, which no one currently has a clue how to solve. So the matter is the intelligence that matters, because of course every one of you may know that when we speak about artificial intelligence, we are giving the word intelligence a specific meaning, a bit different from the general idea of intelligence. But it could be, so I don't want to linger a second on this, because it's very easy understandable that there is not the same intelligence. But when you start relying on the artificial intelligence as you do, or better than you do when you speak with people, or when you do your homeworks, or when you find your girlfriend, or when you prefer your AI girlfriend to the real one, there is the point you have to keep in your mind to remember that you are a human. So if you may think, you haven't seen my girlfriend. In fact, I just was saying that we know weird people, human going with dogs, so why not with artificial intelligence? But it could be kind of perversion in a very sociological way, so different from the average, not with any judgment attached. But keeping our mind on the context, the most interesting thing is that when you want to challenge your AI system, you may conclude, you may end your considerations saying, you are different from humans. But it's about bullify the machine, because of course it is different. Of course, the one from you going to his teacher, trying to say something he didn't study, has the same backlog as the artificial intelligence has, because even the generative one finds the way to give you an answer, even if she, depends from your tastes, doesn't have. But I think that one point is very important, putting our sight, reflecting in the mirror. Because as we are going deep in knowing about artificial intelligence, we are finding out that the real mysterious thing is not the algorithm, because even the most difficult one is still predictable. So not magic. There's no space for magic. I understand that a smartphone, your personal computer, could appear to you as something coming from Harry Potter world. But there's no magic, because it's everything predictable. Predictable means that can be programmed as its own execution, and even the second technologies mentioned at the beginning from Alberto, the machine learning and the LLM systems, they must have all the different solutions. You must contemplate all the different between alternatives. In fact, just giving a word on regulation from our part of the world, so not US, but Europe, one of the points you have to explain as the owner of the AI system is to declare since the beginning how does it work and how it will work in the future. Coming back to philosophical issues, we may observe that we don't have and we cannot consider any future if we find ourselves predictable, because future equal uncertain, not perfect, can be inefficient, can be gratuitous. I would say free, but free asserts another meaning in this case. So looking to us and looking to the AI in the mirror, you may discover that from one side you have the technological conquest, from the other side, made of discoveries, made of innovation, and just spending a parallel world from the other part of the world, still remaining in the West world, we may intend very differently innovation, viewing innovation from US costs. Because of course, we may consider that innovation versus regulation is a big issue and still keep dividing us a bit from one another of the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, I mean. But what you may discover in that mirror, that the mysterious object of your research is, until now, your intelligence. Because your brain is somehow explicable, but how do your brain elaborate, generate your consciousness? It is not. And when we speak about general differences between the most refined EA system and our mind, you may find, and you have to go back to Plato, because we have some characteristics, some features that are unique and exquisitely human. We are concupiscible. We are irascible. We are reasonable. The machine cannot be no. We invent computers too. And we invent computers too. And the big question would be, which is the most modern technology in the real world right now? The answer may be not so trivial, because the answer would be still the human being. Not because, it's not just rhetorical, but it's just because the way we stay in this world, it's both human and technological since the beginning, because there is one point we cannot win with the machine. It's about power, it's about going efficient, it's about be fast, but not going so far. Imagine just the car. Can you run faster than a car? It's impossible. Or just going to another page. It's not about just giving something fast or accurate. It's about changing your mindset. For instance, maybe Stefano can help. When, about the impact, the outreach of this, when it was invented, the telephone, it was just a faster way to communicate. It was just a way to communicate at all in certain circumstances. But it didn't change your mind. When internet came out, it wasn't about be faster or more accurate or more efficient. It was about changing your own mind. So the question is, if you have to consider AI as a contemporary writings at the same time of Plato, because as you know, Plato was an enthusiastic fan of writing, because writing meant to do not memory and keep memories of things. And for Plato was something to renounce to something typical human. So I just want to conclude, because I don't want to take so long. I think that when we look for more achievements in front of general exponential technologies, very well represented by AI, but we can add blockchain, for instance, or other technologies like that. We cannot be simply technology enthusiast or technology catastrophic, because we miss the real world that is exactly in the middle. And the real world in the middle is made of the reality that is unpredictable, as we are. But we can be approximately sure about two things. First one is that we don't have, as Ludwig did, we don't have to take into consideration to destroy the machine. That's just stupid. That's artificial intelligence versus human stupidity. On the opposite, we cannot make the technology our own God. But between the one and the others, there is the possibility, and that's the biggest opportunity, in my opinion, to keep developing technologies, trying to refine technology the much we can, just because they can bring, in the affordable world, a lot of problems we actually think they are without apparent solution. But on the other side, there is not opposite. You have to consider that you are giving yourself the big opportunity as humanity to rediscover or discover for the first time, or to reconquest or conquest for the first time your meaningful meaning of being human before all. So very thank you to the organization, Alberto, to you for moderating this panel, and to Stefano, good luck for your new book, and Eric also for yours. That was a bit dated, but very actual. So very curious of the question may come from.
In fact, so, now is the time for you to ask questions or to make some comments about what you heard and some worries, or you are young, right? So we are not that young, especially me. So we may miss some angles that you see. So we are all ears to understand what you would like to know. So who wants, okay.
Hi, I'm Ghalia, I'm a GG2, and my question for you is, you discussed the political implications of AI misinformation. Would you say that the lack of regulation for AI information and how AI discusses certain topics could allow as a, let's say, as kind of a narrow way for radicalism to utilize AI technology to spread its extreme ideologies, or as a way for radicalism to spread? You know, with the context of like radicalism being utilized as utilizing the internet as a tool to spread its extreme ideologies. And is there a way for us to battle that? Thank you.
Well, I'll start, but you know, this is very intrinsic in the nature of the tool, right? So it's not much you can do except to find ways of fencing where the information is taken. But already fencing is biasing. And so it depends who fence, right? So because I may be of a particular ideology, and then the government can be of a different ideology, and they will fend off the kind of things that I strongly believe in. So in some sense, regulating and trying to find a way of preventing the spread of fake news is a difficult topic, because we get into all these nuances that we need to resolve. Certainly, it would be nice to have someone who looks at facts, so provable facts. That was supposed to be journalism, right? So the role of journalism was to give us information based on facts. Now, the point is that journalists right now, you know, they are artificial intelligence as well. So they make up news, right? So you may remember the case for New York Times, the famous reporter who wrote about things happening in the Middle East that were not true at all. He made it up because he didn't want to go there, right? And so in some sense, this is intrinsic also in human nature, to make things up. So it's a difficult problem. Then you say you heard about the top guys in AI, like the Meta of this world and Google and so on, going to United States government and say, please regulate us. Now that kind of sounds funny, and you say, oh boy, these guys are really worrying about the welfare of the people, but read between the lines. Now, you know that we have GDPR, right, in Europe, And what happened is that we didn't have a privacy policy in the United States. And then all of a sudden, the companies in the United States had to cope with GDPR, and they had to change a lot of things that we were doing before. So what they meant by saying regulators, tell us beforehand what you want to say so that our system will not be caught by this regulation. But it's clear that some kind of regulation is needed.
So here's the thing. If there was a petition, I think it's been quite a while back now, I didn't sign it, but it was to pause research because this was so dangerous. And so what's going on there, frankly, is promulgating this idea that what we're talking about is a creature, not a tool, okay? So we have to pause research on it because this creature is getting stronger and faster and so on. So look, I like sci-fi, I love movies, I really do, but that very much confuses the actual issues. Like, let me tell you what the actual issues are with ChatGPT. It's ability to confabulate, which is just a fancy word for bullshit, right? And to have, you know, groups of people, organizations believing entire things that are completely untrue. Being manipulated by AI technology in a very boring way. It's just bad people using new tools like they always have. And so what happens in the United States, and you know, sorry, I feel like I should apologize, but like, is that, you know, like those kinds of petitions just serve the interests of the people who want this technology to be the only thing you're thinking about, right? Instead of actually having an honest debate about what are the threats. Look, I can tell you what the threats are: killer viruses from rogue nations. Like I said, you know, using ChatGPT in such a way. Let's train a model so it consistently skews all of your information and all of your knowledge towards a point of view that's actually not healthy for the world. That's what's going to happen. In terms of it becoming a kind of, you know, super intelligent entity or something like that, I think I do think that people actually, there are people that I know, and I consider them to be very intelligent people who really think that. But if you view AI as a kind of cool tool for cultural production, and as it's a danger because it's a powerful tool, then you start to get on track in terms of what regulation we should have. That's how I look at that issue. Thank you.
Yeah, I quite agree. Just a couple of points. But first of all, of course, here, speaking of disinformation and artificial intelligence can play, I mean, on the offensive, both on the offensive and on the defensive. So it's, I mean, it's the way, I mean, that this human-machine collaboration, I mean, can work. I mean, that can determine, I mean, the final result, in my opinion. Speaking of, and the second point, speaking of regulation, yeah, of course, on GDPR, Europe, and on privacy, I mean, with the GDPR, Europe preceded, I mean, other areas, and still in the US there are privacy laws at state level, but not at federal level. I don't know about AI. I perceived then when I was in Washington in July, I mean, I was telling you, I mean, I perceived a lot of attention on AI that I haven't perceived on other issues, other digital issues before, especially in terms of national security concerns that, I mean, the US, of course, are very, very important, and much more important than we perceive them here in Europe. Also, because the US is a superpower, at least in defense and strategic terms. So I don't know if there would be here a Brussels effect as it was for GDPR. You know that the AI Act is in the so-called trilogue phase. That is the end, I mean, of with the political negotiation between the different institutions. So probably, of course, Europe will be first, but I see that in the US there is attention on this. We know that, of course, Congress is very divided, politically divided, and there is an extreme polarization. But I think that the US wants to be more active on this issue, as I said, especially for national security concerns, and of course looking also at other superpowers, China especially. Yeah. No, I don't want to go off on one thing, but
ChatGPT is absolutely worthless for military applications. You cannot have something hallucinate, okay? So
yeah, no, here I don't speak. I'm not speaking of ChatGPT. Yeah. But no, I totally agree on what you said on the moratorium, 6 months moratorium. I mean, that was ridiculous in my opinion. Totally agree. Yeah. And and this is a point that I do in my book. I mean, speaking of the Oppenheimer moment or things like that, I think it's a totally a massive distraction from the real problems of AI at the moment.
Just to add comments, because they were very clear and agree with their assumptions. In general, I think that every technology is neutral. So it depends and it belongs from your behavior. If you are ill-intentioned, of course, you are going to make an ill use of the technology. On the opposite, if you are well-intentioned, you do consequently. But in the case of artificial intelligence, you may have a very powerful accelerator and co-producer, because we can assume that artificial intelligence, as a lot of multinational company are saying, is a kind of co-pilot for your life. So at certain level, he, she is not going to do something at your place. I mean, not in all your places. But when you think at your cooperation with technology, you think that something may serve you. Of course, you can finish at the end of the day to be the one is serving. But we just knew this kind of querelle since the beginning of social networks, of some impressions of missing out moments. So just to be in place. Just one very general consideration in order to be political or geopolitical. Of course, there is another issue. I don't remember from where came from it there. AI and all technologies, they also give us a big challenge on how we do allocate or relocate sources, and there is a big question about democracy of these decisions, because in Rome we may say per non sapere né leggere né scrivere. So just assuming that you don't know nothing at all, you may think that all the waste of the world is just exactly where we used to put all the waste of the world. So that could be the same picture you may have about the waste. We can add the space. It's just new space to occupy. That's interesting, but we share with dinosaurs, other mammals, they stay on 2 feet. We are pervasive beings. We used to spread ourselves all abroad the world. But we have something dinosaurs missed. The acknowledgement that the party can end. And second one, even if you don't have this acknowledgement, the possibility to put end or the all humanity life, I cannot say with one button, surely with a lot of buttons, but surely putting end of your life. So, without coming catastrophist, in the middle, once again, there is an issue very interesting for, I guess, you are studying global studies, global governance, right? And as we were speaking just yesterday, there is one point about multinational and their power, such as the proved agent in society. We can recognize sometimes much more than institutions are. Company can be agent for social, cultural, political changes much more effectively than politics. But that's because the scale. Because imagine we are in Rome, Roma Capitale. It's a bit naive that one city has to remember herself to be capital. I cannot remember Washington capital or Paris capital or that we can say it's very open to our way to be inefficient. But when you work as a big company, largest as big part of the world is, you can rule most of the world. And if you miss any institutional subject that can afford this scale, you cannot rule politically the world as it is ruled economically. So you have to think at an update, for not saying a new way to intend constitutional law. Because even your national constitutional law is national. At largest can be the one of US, so it's federal, largest as the continent is, but not as the world is. So you cannot handle any multinational decision from a town or regional or national or over national level. And that's a point about global governance, but establishing a new dialogue, politics, not versus, with economics, without being submitted, without submission to the whatever new old economic order. And that's an interesting point and matter of research for people young as you are, I guess.
So, now we have another question. I would like to ask my member of the panel to cut it out.
Yeah,
so like a few minutes per answer.
I'll be short as well because we have 8 more questions and not even 10 minutes to answer. So my question is just a yes or no. So when it comes, I'm Sofia, GG2. When it comes to governance, to politics, diplomacy is highly criticized, and as well as artificial intelligence. Yet diplomacy is the least worst form of government. It's not perfect, but the least worst. My question is, does the same go for artificial intelligence? Meaning, do we see a future without artificial intelligence? Do we want a future without artificial intelligence? And should we want a future without artificial intelligence? That's it. Just a yes or no question.
Well, I think it's a similar question. Say, do you want a future without your cell phone? I mean, there are certain technologies that are part of your life. And so just negating the existence of the technology is not going to make it go away. So the point is that you have a tool, use it at its best. So cell phones can be used well, can be used horribly, right? Like we know some cases, right? So it's all about a tool and how you're going to use it. So think about AI as a tool. Don't think about artificial intelligence, but think about augmented intelligence, right? So you augment your intelligence with these techniques, with this. It's like a novel way of modeling the world, but that's about it.
I'll be very brief. There is no such thing as artificial intelligence. What it is massive statistical analysis of data, okay? That's what it is. So the question that you asked is a very good question, but I think it would be better if we could find a way to rephrase it in terms of how much do we want to centralize data and analyze it? And how much do we want to create worlds where people are free to do different things, privacy and so on?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think I mean the technology is there, and so it's not going to be a way. I mean, and the question is to use it in the best way. I mean, that we can. Of course, improving the technology, and this is something important, but I don't think it would be possible to think of throwing away, I mean, the technology as it is. I mean, we can choose to not use artificial intelligence for some tasks. This maybe, but the technology is there, and so I think the real choice is how to use it in the best way.
Okay, other question?
Hi, hello. I'm Giulia Maria Radicchi. I'm a second-year student of global governance. So my question is more related to the use of artificial intelligence that we can do for humanitarian purposes. And that comes from something that I read, was a case study that I read from Stanford, and they were talking about how you can you can purposely create algorithms that will favor demographics that would be otherwise unfavored if, for example, we just look at the data. So if you are, for example, you're hiring people, and you look at the data, you will find that there is a high percentage of POC people, for example, of specific ethnicities that are not hired because of biases that exist in society. And this case study that I read was talking about how we can reverse manually, let's say, this trend by purposely modifying the algorithm. So we can kind of see this in the broader perspective of using AI as a tool, as a vector for humanitarian change. There's also a startup that is called AI for Peace that does this specifically, and I would like to know your take on this, because like we talk about the myth of AI, but actually if we put our human, let's say, action with the tools that AI offers, we can really do good actions. Thank you.
It goes back to the previous point. So you have a tool, a powerful tool, that is all about data analysis. So you say about the bias, right? Well, if anyone has studied statistics, how many people here know about statistics? A few, okay? Now, I do so. So in statistics, the issue of bias in data is a classic one. And so you have techniques that reduce the bias. So you analyze the distribution of data, and then you find out how to give more weight to the unrepresented part of the space, right? So there is weighted Monte Carlo is a classic way of doing this. So the point is that, and here we go to a very important point. In science, unfortunately, you keep on reinventing the wheel or forgetting that somebody else has looked at the problem and solved the problem because of ignorance. So the point is that many few people who are actually massaging AI, if you like, by doing coding or building tools and so on, know the theoretical underpinning of data analysis. And for that reason, you have all the mess that you're finding yourself in, because there are biased data, insufficient data, the prediction of something cannot be predicted. You know, it's all these kind of issues that have been studied. So if someone would, in his right mind, would put this together in building these mathematical models that are analyzing this massive amount of data, will be in a better place.
Just two quick points on this. You were referring to hiring and the possible bias in hiring. This is one of the cases in the AI Act under discussion in Europe. Hiring is judged as a high-risk application of AI, and so is, I mean, before going to the market, a company with an app on hiring based on AI, there is a so-called conformity assessment that has to be passed and approved before going to the market. So it's a very important question, of course. And secondly, yeah, there is all this field area of attention that is called AI for good, that is on that direction. And I was last week in Brussels at a dinner with the Director General of DG Connect, that is and he talked about AI for good. And again, it's, I mean, AI can be used for wrong purposes or for good purposes. Of course, AI for good should be developed as much as possible, because it can help without deification, as I said before. So knowing the imperfections of the instrument, but of course it can be applied for very good purposes, and so there should be, I mean, more investment on that.
So yeah, that was a really good question. Thanks. So one of the things that I think happens when you look at a technology is you get into a linear mindset where you say, I've got this thing, and if I can just make it better, then all this other stuff is going to get better, right? So if you go to the medical field, when doctors originally started, and still today actually, putting their data into electronic interfaces, they were losing information from the written word, right? So what happens is they have to go back, rewind, ask questions, waste time, waste money, because they don't, because the information that was available in the written word is no longer available in the application interface, right? So nobody thinks about this. They just think it's got to be better than. And in general, it is. Let's the car is better than the horse buggy, right? Like, let's just be honest. Like, you know, technology does get better. But if you think about it in a linear way, you can actually make things worse because of unintended consequences, right? And so I think like the message I try to bring to people, and I always want to talk to young people because like that's the future, you know, is like, how do we stop thinking about things in a linear way? Like how do we create people who can really problem solve using technology as a tool? So, yeah. Who wants to?
It's just about to enrich your own personal scenario. As they said before, it's to enlarge your possibility to make decision. It's a so powerful tool, not unintended, but intended this way, that even if you are linear or not linear, can help you, providing you, I mean, you institution, you company, you personally, in all scenarios, even the most terrible one as war scenarios, of course. but can help you providing several different scenarios that neither a whole hangar of people providing you scenarios can do the same in a very short time. I can say in a very quick time. So with the fire, imagine at the time of Neanderthal, the same question. So do we have to keep doing stuff with fire? Or do we want to quit doing stuff with fire? Of course, the humanity might have took the other way, but as if we are as we are, it's just because we took the risk to handle fire, and most of the time to address our faculty, our capacity, our direction, mainly for good. Or if not mainly, the time we did it for good, it was good enough. For keep surviving and living our life, I mean, with kind of dignity. The real question is how to include not the biggest part, a big part of the world to this debate and to these technologies, because when we speak about AI for peace or AI for Africa, it's the same thing all the time. That's we speaking about AI for somebody else. But we're gonna allow these continents, these countries, these people to be emancipated enough to start or keeping discussing on these topics for their common good, because of course there is a lot to do in that part of the world, also for the whole part of the world. So I think it's very powerful also in this way.
Other questions?
Hello, I'm Silvia Muscati, and my question is, do you think that there is a possibility where men will no longer have power over artificial intelligence? And why do you think that people are so afraid, are so scared about this dystopian scenario? Thank you.
I have one word: ignorance.
So I did write a book about this. And that doesn't mean that I claim to have a good answer. It is part and parcel of the field from its inception in the 1950s to kind of marry this sort of, Mary Shelley Frankensteinian idea. So I think there's something like really powerful and good about feeling like we have so much potential that we can actually build another creature with our technology. And so there's this paradoxical element of AI where if we stop thinking that way, we're gonna lose something really important. But if we keep thinking that way, we're going to confuse people in potentially very dangerous ways. So I don't have an answer for you as to why people think AI is just gonna come alive, somehow. I can tell you this, and I'll bet everything on this for as long as I live, it's never gonna happen, I promise you. I can be a lot more confident about saying that a lot of very bad things are gonna come from data centralization and from what we call AI with this, but in this kind of more mythical sense, right? Like in this sense of like, why do we do this at all? Why would anyone think that this thing is gonna be a creature, right? It's wires, right? And we don't have any evidence of anything other than biology actually ever doing this. So there's really no scientific case that we can make for it, other than we really like to believe. And so, like I'm in Italy. Let's talk about the Italian Renaissance, which was one of the greatest moments. That was a belief in like basically unbounded human potential, right? And so part of the answer to your question is we're continuing the tradition, but we're doing it in a way that's undermining, right? So it's like, it's very difficult to tease these things out. But it's a fantastic question. Thank you.
I still believe that you need education of people to make them understand what artificial intelligence really is. But you just mentioned Frankenstein and all of this. Now, the point is that you see the confusion here? You know, machine learning is the analysis of data and trying to mine the data to figure out what they are telling us. The creature is a combination of biology and robotics. And where is machine learning to be seen? You can put some machine intelligence there, but it's really a completely different topic, but it's still artificial intelligence. And so that makes sure that you understand that artificial intelligence is a big field, right? Robotics is a piece of it. But there is also a machine learning aspect, understanding data, using the data, a massive amount of data, and making decisions. So that's the reason why I started saying definition, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning. So they are one inside the other, right? But the point is also to understand what machine learning can or cannot do. My opinion is also a fault of educational system, especially in the United States, where they teach you what to do, but not why things are the way they are. So they say, do this and you will be happy. And no.
So 5 seconds, super quick. So I just wanted to say something that you said earlier, which I have thought many, many times, which is the question of bias, which is you got this large data set and you have underrepresented groups and so on. You can take a 19, and I'm not kidding you, and you said this, I'm supporting your point. You can take a 1960s textbook on statistics and all of the answers about how we do this are in there if you want to go back. So it's not a question that we don't understand how to do statistics. It's a question that there are more English speakers than Italian speakers. So you're going to have a bias towards English in ChatGPT. You guys see what I'm getting at? There's nothing you can do about that, right? But I'm not saying that there's nothing we can do about getting better about bias questions. But I'm saying the answers and the analysis of bias questions are actually basic fundamental statistical questions. And the reason that we have all these inequalities are because of the distribution of the data. And, okay, thanks, that's
Exactly.
it. But you said that earlier and I was like, that is such a great thing.
Other questions?
Yes. Hi, I'm Rebecca Maria Serrano and I'm from Italy. My question is very technical. So we know that in the world there are more than 79 zettabytes of data. And could this be a problem that affects hallucination of AI? Or the more the data, the more precise it will be?
Can someone else take this one first?
Okay. Well,
Not that it's not a great question, but
no,
I'm not
indeed,
sure
but
I'm just not sure what I want to say.
well, I mean, the more data, the more good data are good, right? The more data is bad because you have to have a way of curating the data. So in other words, you have to analyze the data and then you have to make sense of them in the sense how they were obtained, what kind of noise they come with the data, what kind of errors that you make. And this one is all about engineering. I mean, it's living in an uncertain world with imperfect measurement, right? So if you get imperfect data, of course, it's going to be very bad. The more imperfect data you get, you are completely stuck, right? So the answer is find a way of cleaning the data. In fact, we say curating the data, but it is a part of statistical analysis to screen the bad stuff from the data. So we go back to things that we know how to do. Now, on this large scale, I don't know. So the scale is a problem, right? The scale is a problem. Which brings again to the issue, more data better or not, more accurate or not.
So when it comes to machine learning, more data is almost always better. And one of the interesting things about the convolutional neural networks, the deep learning, I'm sorry for the tech speak, is that we used to have this problem in the field where we would get a data saturation point, where if you added data, you wouldn't get an increase in the performance of the system. And it turns out, and I think this is why the innovation was so powerful, that if you just keep adding data and keep adding data, it just gets better and better and better at whatever target you define as better, though, right? So that's the human element. And so the other thing is that this is an extremely important point. I can see you guys are getting kind of antsy, so we're running out of data to make the models more powerful. There's just no more data left that humans have produced on the World Wide Web. So we have to do something that's called synthetic data production, which is basically use the machine to try to pretend like it's an intelligent brain or mind that's making more data. And it turns out that once you get above a certain threshold in synthetic data, the performance of the system starts to drop. So we're going to get back to the saturation point eventually. And it was actually Sam Altman. He's the head of OpenAI. And by the way, the research for this came out of Google Brain and Google Mind Scholars, and there was a university trial. So OpenAI just grabbed a research paper in 2017 called "Attention is All You Need," and they were the ones who understood how to make use of it. But it was Sam Altman even said, we can't have a Chat GPT 100. Like, we're just running out of data. In other words, and you can actually Google this, like Google, do you guys have cell phones? I'm pretty sure you do, right? Like, he said, this is not a way forward. That the CEO of the person who actually, made this a household concept. So some of the question about big data is, we just don't have big enough data for this approach. That makes it a non-innovative approach past a certain point.
But there is another point. It's not necessarily true what you say, that you make it more precise, because what happens is that if you add a data and your model doesn't have the right structure, what happens is you add data and actually it's getting worse. And the reason is that you try to follow that data and to answer correctly that particular data point, and all of a sudden something you have done before, it goes away. And so it's wrong on the previous data. So this is another statistics issue, right? So you have to have a model which is powerful enough to make sense of the data, but there are two problems: underfitting and overfitting. Underfitting is when the model is too small. Overfitting when it's too large, because then you follow the cases and you don't get the reasons why things are the way they are. Okay.
Yes, hello, my name is Stanislas. I come from Switzerland. And I have a question. Do you think economists will be replaced by AI? And if yes, how should they adapt to cope with this changement?
Yes. Yeah, I didn't understand well. The question is about the economies or the economists? No, as I said before, I don't think in a outright substitution of humans with AI. On general terms, I think of a collaboration of what the economists call, a complementarity between humans and machines. Because as also Eric said very well in his book, of course, human intelligence is very different. How humans work is very different from how machines work. And there are characteristics, of course, where humans will stay superior to machines for, I cannot say, any, forecast, but for way long in the future, at least. And other instances where, of course, machines are already superior to, and will be increasingly superior to humans. So I think the complementarity between machines and humans make the world better than just a substitution. This is on broad terms. Then, as I said, of course, for some functions you can see substitutions, but I don't think our complete jobs to be substituted by machines. I don't think this is the way forward, yeah, I'm pretty sure about it.
Up to a point, I didn't. No. Yes. Te lo dopo. But, I went to give a talk at a big law firm in Italy. It's called Chiumenti. It's one of the biggest firms in Europe. And they were afraid. They say, what do we do? What do we use AI for? Now, if you look around in the publications and the like, in a law firm, there is one senior partner and 7, in the average, and 7 lower level workers that look at documents, find cases, do due diligence and all that kind of stuff. Now, with large language models, you can get rid of 6 of these 7. And so the future is going to be 1 senior person, 1 junior person. And what this does is also democratizing the law profession in the sense that large firms are not going to be so much more powerful than the small firm, because they have these tools that can help preparing the case, not making the case, preparing the case. Making the case still important. So senior partners are not going to go away, junior partners are. Okay, other question, and then we close because it's... Okay, very last. Okay, so...
Just...
So no more questions?
Thank you for listening.